morning.
Good morning.
It's Guest Thursday, and Chelsa is, I think, going to hop on. We just communicated a little bit earlier. So we're going to punt a little and see if she shows up. You know, we didn't really plan for this. So, Dr. Mary, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about our matching outfits?
We are both wearing green. we need a little bit more coordination as we pass each other coming in and out of the shower.
Well, I didn't get dressed in the shower, but I know what you mean. Okay, so let's talk about we're going to talk about this more on Tuesday, but we've, including today, 3 episodes left. How are you feeling about what it's going to be like going forward to not be doing this?
It's going to be weird. I mean, it was weird for a while when we went from 5 days a week to 2.
It was.
But it seemed like we didn't run out of ideas, and it was kind of less stressful.
Yeah, kind of.
I know it's been a huge part of our lives, actually. Doing this.
2.5 years.
Every now and then it was a blind panic at 5 to 8, going, "What do you want to talk about?" I don't know. I thought you were thinking about it. And somehow we managed to. Yeah, there was always. Don't get me wrong. There's always ideas. We're always getting bombarded with email threads or links to various.
There she is.
Emails.
Thank goodness.
Here's something alcoholics.
Hold your thought. Hold your thought. That'll be Tuesday's conversation. Tune in.
Sorry, I was challenged.
It's all right. You're here.
I am here.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
We're good too. It's funny. I was laughing because I went back to look at our previous conversation, and I had a lot of makeup on just for you, and B, I started the whole thing, as I started many of them then, with like a blind panic hysteria because I felt like the technology was always failing. So it was nice that the technology challenge was not on our side today. And I appreciate that you just muscled through and got on.
Yes, the show must go on.
Absolutely. We were talking about nothing at all interesting. So thank goodness you joined us.
I'm glad you turned up. We were beginning a spiral there, actually.
I find that hard to believe. You two are always interesting.
Well, that's kind of you to say. This might have stretched that just a bit. So I went back to look. You and we, however you would say that, the 3 of us talked January 14th, 2021. So almost 2 years ago. It's amazing to think about. And you were our first guest, except for Quinn, who was the child of someone who had been an alcoholic and then had found sobriety. Chelsa, just remind us quickly, how old were you when your dad went to treatment and you went through that whole family treatment phase?
Well, how old was I? Well, I was married, and Zachary would have been about 3-ish. So I would have been about 24, somewhere in there.
So was your dad an alcoholic your entire childhood?
Correct. Yeah.
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 The only story I remember very clearly, and I often think about it, is you talking about he'd hit something and driven it down the road, because your mom and dad live very close to us. So I see that street a lot.
Yes, that was the last hurrah, if you will.
Yeah. What did he hit?
He hit the utility pole and knocked the wheel clear off the car and drove down the street on the rim. So it sounded like a locomotive coming down the street. Because metal on concrete.
Yeah, it's an unpleasant sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was he was drawing some attention, we shall say.
I bet he was. Okay, so Chelsa, you've had something sad happen since you were on 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you want to just share that with us?
Well, Dad passed away in September. It was expected and unexpected all at the same time. He'd had several diagnoses of various things, and I mean, the short answer is that it all just caught up because his body was tired. So we'll just leave it at that. But in the end, it was it was still kind of a surprise. So it's been hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so because I see you approximately every 3 weeks to do my nails, and you really do develop an interesting intimacy with someone when you are doing that kind of work and you have that full hour together.
Yeah.
But I've heard you in part because of Daily Dose. I've heard you talk about your dad and the things that you learned because of going through that family treatment process and all of that. And certainly have known the ups and downs of his health in these last couple of years. But when I asked you about 6 weeks ago now, what has changed about how you think about your dad and in particular his addiction? You had an immediate answer, and that's what really prompted me to reinvite you back onto the show. How are you feeling about that piece of his life and your life together now?
Yeah, well, what I had shared with you is that like the crap and the garbage, it doesn't matter, there would have been a time and space where if you would have asked me that question and someone would have said, well, you'll find out later that it doesn't matter, I would have said, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because, there was a lot of ugly and there was a lot of hurt and trauma. And so it's kind of amazing and nothing short of a miracle that you can even heal that within you when you, I'm sorry.
You do not need to apologize, Chelsa.
So it's like in the loss, you're remembering the good.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just found myself so grateful that our family was able to heal enough. I mean, I'm not saying that we're quote unquote done because there's 5 people that are in this family, dad included, and everybody's at a different stage in their journey. And that's to be expected because we're all different, we're individuals. But I just found myself so grateful that even with all of that history, that we could go through that process of ushering dad out of this world in a healthy dynamic. It's like, because trauma is tricky and, processing and grieving and all those things is very tricky for each person. And I just was so proud of our family that we could do that, that we've had a healing to be able to do that, to be around each other, to not bicker, to be celebrating the good. It's like, I don't take it for granted at all.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful reflection. And you said it so immediately. I was just shocked at how quickly you said it. And I thought, we have to have her on if you were willing to share it again, because I think what you said is really true. If someone had said it to you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you might have said, don't be stupid. You don't let that stuff go. You might put it down, but you don't let it go.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like what they say, you forget about the pain of childbirth. It's like, bull crap, you don't, it's like,
I'll take your word for it since I only did it once.
Yeah. But it's like, and it's like, I'm not forgetting it. It's amazing to me because I don't have any logical explanation for it, except that, maybe just like the process of the work that I've done in therapies and everything like that, it just takes you to a different space in your heart and your mind, and you process it different, where it's like, I don't want to be gripped in bitterness and resentfulness and wishing dad could have gotten sober quicker because we would have had more years. It's like, what if everything unfolded exactly the way it was supposed to? And in the end, we had all this beauty. It's like, I want to celebrate the beauty.
Yeah. All right. I've been waiting. Here's Bonnie. Chelsa, that's such a tribute to your dad. Everything about him is true. And I love that you were able to celebrate with your family what your family was able to do, both for you and for him. I hope he saw it and knew it. I'm sorry he's gone. Yeah, I think thanks for that, Mother. I think that the real beauty is what you just said. You haven't forgotten it. You've just sort of right-sized it, maybe.
Yeah. And there was a moment in the hospital because dad passed away in the hospital, and there was a lot of quietness, when that process of waiting, but hoping that, you get more days. It is so bizarre. Like it's so,
It is.
but, I was sitting there and Dad looked over at me and he's like, I think maybe some of that stuff at Drake, is helping with now. I mean, out of this clear blue. And
Drake
it's
is where you did the treatment,
counseling,
right? Yeah.
counseling center in Fargo. Yeah. And I just, part of me wanted to be like, what are you thinking about? What made you think of that? Blah, 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 tell me more. And I just looked at him. I'm like, for sure, Dad. And that's all I said.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing to me that even he was thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he had to have been so grateful that he and you all were able to repair, get to a new normal, all those things. I'm sure I've told you this, but I think so often of a man. Maz was in the hospital. So this was before treatment. It was right towards the end of his 2.5 weeks in the hospital, meeting with a social worker, and she had asked me to step out. And so I was standing in the hallway, and a nurse was making calls for a man who, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, had dried out in the hospital. And first she called his sister and she said, can you come pick up whatever his name was? Mike. Oh, you're busy today? Do you think you could come tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't come tomorrow either. And she made 3 or 4 calls. She called a son, she called a daughter, she called a friend, and nobody would come for him.
Yeah.
And I remember in the moment thinking, I can't do this so many times that I literally say I won't come again.
Right.
So there was that fear, but there was also just the tremendous sadness that none of those people were going to get any sort of closure. The man and all of those people in his life, because they didn't have the opportunity, take the opportunity, however you want to think of it, whatever their circumstances were, they didn't do the work that you and your family did.
Yeah. And that's the thing where like that would have been, I mean, a total possibility that Dad could have died alone because his family was just like, it had enough. And it's like, I just can't, I keep using the word grateful and I feel like I need a new word because it's like, it's a whole nother level of depth of gratitude. It's just like, it could have turned out so different.
Yeah.
Like there's a miracle in his sobriety because I think I had shared before that, I thought he'd end up in prison or he'd kill himself, driving drunk behind the wheel. And I mean, I'm not saying that lightly. That literally is what I thought. And so it was a miracle that neither one of those things manifested. And then just the miracle of the healing of the relationships and everything. It's just like, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah. I don't really think you do need a new word. That's a pretty good word. It's not like you're saying over and over. It was just an awesome thing. Maybe we work on a new word then.
I know. I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like the gratitude is trendy, which sounds bizarre.
Put it up on your wall, Chelsa. You're all right.
I was actually saying my gratitude's trending, is it?
On a neon sign. But it's just, I mean, just circling back, it's like you do forget about a lot of the ugly, or it's possible, I should say that. It is possible, to have a level of healing where you forget about, or you set it aside, like a lot of those hurts and healings, and you can just see, well, thank God we have each other. Thank God we had this healing. I mean, because, and I've even, it's weird because, if you would have asked me like life lessons that my father taught me, I would have said, well, he was a little busy, like growing up. He didn't have time for the life lessons. And like just a silly example is, like when I would buy him like a Father's Day card at Hallmark, I didn't go to the "You're the rock of our family," cards. I went to the cartoony "I love you, Daddy" from your daughter, because I did love him and I was a total daddy's girl and still am, always will be. But it's like those intense messages just didn't really resonate with me. And interesting in his death that like I feel like some of the frustrations or the whatevers of the alcoholism kind of faded away and now those more life lessons have revealed themselves. And it's like, well, crap, I wish I would have had a little more clarity on that when he was still around, but I'm grateful that I have the clarity at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a gift. It's a gift now.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just, he did teach us things, even in that trauma and chaos and hurt and just, there was, unbeknownst to us, we were learning things, and I'm sure we had some level of awareness on a few things, but not to the level of what I'm experiencing now in his passing. So
I just think that's extraordinary.
yeah.
Do you have anything to add? I've given you zero opportunity to speak. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, it's fantastic to listen you talk about that in the way of your dad. I mean, my dad died 23 years ago. He wasn't an alcoholic, and we had a really close relationship. But it's still things that life lessons that you almost forget, and then if it's happening to you years later, you think, "Oh, right, that's what he meant."
Yeah.
But that's going to be with you forever, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
When the sadness goes away, you're kind of left with a nice, peaceful feeling that you were tight when the end came.
Yeah, and it's like, I just, people are like, well, do you have any regret? And I'm like, I kind of twitch at that word, because it's like, I feel like things unfold the way they should. Of course, you can always be like, well, maybe I could have done that a little different, but I wouldn't label it as a regret. But I just, if I could point something out, is just to have, I just wish Dad could have seen me appreciate him in some of those more tender types, because our relationship, I mean, we had a great relationship, but a lot of the times it was silliness, fun, laughing, like stuff like that. And I'm not saying I would, I want less laughing, but it's like that maybe a little, maybe a couple more opportunities of some depth,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think those are hard moments, because if it's not your pattern and routine, then you have to be like, Dad, today we're going to have like a Hallmark movie moment. Well,
yeah,
I based on conversations we've had about your dad, I don't see your dad saying, fantastic, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
No, he'd be like,
making a joke about it.
But where's this coming from? He'd be wanting to solve the mystery of where this strange conversation is coming from. And it's like, Dad, but
yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we wish we could have things that just literally wouldn't have been possible based on the history we have with the person, who they are, who we are, all those kinds of things. And so then I think it goes back to what you've said now, is just having gratitude for the bad, which led to the good.
Yeah. And it's like, we have our own patterns, even as families. And, even though my brothers we haven't lived around each other in over 20 years, it's like, we're very different people from when we were in our 20s, obviously. But I feel like the patterns, they're still similar. It's kind of
hard to shake those sibling patterns.
Yeah, like the hierarchy or lack thereof. And it's like, you just kind of are on autopilot on some level. And I don't know how they would feel to hear me say that, whatever. But but it's like, if we could have, maybe matured in our communication collectively, it's like, what would that have looked like? But at the same time, it's perfect the way it is,
Yeah.
So I'm just, just in reflection and, trying to, learn lessons. What did you learn in this chapter? It's like, well, okay, if I had to, point out a few things, but yeah, just what triggered you initially when I answered you at the magical nail table, is, it's just like, it's just amazing to me how the crap doesn't matter. Like in those moments of finality, kind of, so.
It's such a good lesson. I think we mostly don't ever learn until it's too late. Like you think about the hysteria leading up to some weddings, and people treat that day like
Yeah.
The end of the world will come that night. And so it's got to be perfect. And it doesn't matter what it costs. And it doesn't matter what I have to do to make it that way. I will do it. Yeah. And then you get past it and you think, wow, none of that actually mattered.
No, it's like, and I think some of that comes with age and wisdom is like, I say a lot, who cares? Like, honest to God, who cares? You know, it's like, well, talk this out. What's worst case scenario? You know, if your nail color is ugly, what is, like, talk it out. Like, you're gonna be fine. Like, serious, you guys. Like, it's amazing to me what people get hung up on, you know, but.
Well, you know, I tell you this all the time. Yeah. Choosing my nail color, one of the toughest decisions I make. Every 3 weeks.
I could imagine you say it's December. Keep your gloves on. I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Well, what's so incredible about you, Chelsa, is that you don't lean into that drop. I'll hem and haw, and then I'll say to you, you have to make this decision for me. It's too much, and you never dismiss me. You also don't encourage me. You just say we're going to go with this. Nail color. I really can't. It's very hard.
You're a pale redhead. You just get the stuff that goes with that.
Well, I'll bring you along next time. And
even I know that.
Yeah. You have a box for pale redhead appropriate color. Apparently, that's all I need. Thank goodness you're here.
Oh, no. You say men can't work out shades of color.
Mm-hmm. Chelsa, thank you for sharing this with us. I'm sorry to have started your day on a little bit of sadness, but I also know that there's a lot of joy in reflecting on who he was in your life and who he will continue to be in your life. Just because he's not physically here doesn't mean he's not still here with you.
And you have a wonderful attitude towards all of this. You really do.
Well, I just want to encourage people that there's healing and trauma, you know, specific to my story of alcoholism, that there's still beauty available in that story. And so thank you for asking me and pushing me gingerly and respectfully to do this, even though I was feeling pretty raw.
Yeah, well, it's not been very long.
Yeah.
All right, so ignore the misspelling of your name. Chelsa, you are so wonderful. You are so dry and have such great expressions. I'm so happy I got to sit at a magic nail table and watch you too. And of course, I have pictures. That is true. I have not posted them because they're not amazing pictures, but there we are having the magic happen. Chelsa, thanks so much for saying yes. Really, I think that lesson, saying yes twice, but I think that lesson is so valuable.
It's incredible.
You don't have to wait till someone dies to try to adopt some of it right now.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, have a fantastic
Have
day.
a great
I will see you next week.
Ciao.
Everyone else, we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.